I received an unexpected inheritance from my grandmother, a beautiful beach house in Maine that I spent summers at growing up. I was thrilled but cautious about sharing the news with my family, especially my manipulative brother, Patrick. At the annual family gathering, I reluctantly announced my inheritance. The atmosphere shifted instantly when Patrick stood up and declared, "That's not just your house, Annalie. Grandma meant it for all of us. It's family property now." His words sent a chill down my spine, but I had no idea how far he'd go. The beach house had been my safe haven since childhood. My grandmother Eleanor had purchased it when I was just 6 years old, and every summer afterward became a treasured memory. I could still picture the weathered blue shutters, the wraparound porch where we'd play board games during thunderstorms, and the private stretch of beach where I'd collected seashells every morning before anyone else woke up. After my divorce 3 years ago, I had been struggling financially. My job as a pediatric nurse at Boston Children's Hospital was rewarding but not particularly lucrative. The apartment I rented after selling the house I'd shared with my ex-husband was small and impersonal. When I received the call from my grandmother's attorney, I initially thought it was about some minor bequest, perhaps her collection of vintage teacups or the antique rocking chair I'd always admired. "Miss Bradley, I'm calling regarding your grandmother Eleanor's will," Thomas Harrington had said, his voice formal yet kind. "She has left her beach property in Kennebunkport, Maine, to you in its entirety." I nearly dropped the phone. "The entire house? Are you sure?" "Yes, quite sure. The deed will be transferred to your name once probate closes, which should be within 60 days. Your grandmother was very organized and left explicit instructions." That evening, I sat on my small balcony clutching a mug of tea, trying to process this life-changing news. The beach house represented not just financial security, but a connection to the happiest moments of my childhood. Grandma Eleanor had always shown special attention to me, perhaps because I was her only granddaughter among 4 grandsons. While my brother Patrick had been busy with sports and later with making money, I had spent countless hours helping Grandma with her garden, learning to bake her famous blueberry muffins, and listening to stories of her youth. My phone buzzed with a text from Patrick. "Heard about Grandma's will. We should discuss options for the beach house. Call me." I felt a knot form in my stomach. Patrick had always been the golden child in my parents' eyes, successful investment banker, perfect wife, 2 adorable children. What could he possibly want to discuss about my inheritance? For weeks, I avoided his calls, busying myself with work and preliminary plans for renovating the beach house. I envisioned replacing the aging kitchen appliances, repainting the bedrooms in soothing coastal colors, and perhaps adding a small office where I could eventually work remotely part of the year. Then came the annual Bradley family gathering, a tradition that had continued even after my grandparents were gone. This year it was at my parents' suburban home outside Boston. I debated not attending, but ultimately decided it was better to face everyone directly rather than let rumors circulate. The gathering started pleasantly enough with the usual catching up, admiring how much the children had grown, and complimenting my mother's cooking. After dinner, during coffee and dessert, my Aunt Susan asked about Grandma Eleanor's will, and all eyes turned to me. "Yes," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Grandma left me her beach house in Kennebunkport. I'm planning to fix it up a bit and spend time there whenever I can." That's when Patrick stood up, wine glass in hand. "Actually, there's something everyone should know." He pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "I found this letter from Grandma. She clearly intended the beach house to stay available for everyone in the family. It says right here that the house should always be a place where the family can gather and make memories together." As murmurs spread around the table, Patrick's wife Jessica began approaching relatives, clipboard in hand. "We're thinking of creating a fair schedule for everyone to use the house. Perhaps signing this will help show Annalie that we all support keeping it in the family." I sat frozen as my relatives, people I'd known all my life, began nodding and signing Jessica's paper. My own parents exchanged glances but remained silent. By dessert's end, I was effectively isolated, watching my inheritance being divided up before it was even legally mine. The drive back to my apartment that night was a blur. My hands shook on the steering wheel as tears threatened to spill over. How could my family turn against me so quickly? And what exactly was that letter Patrick had produced? Grandma had never mentioned any such arrangement to me, and we had spoken extensively about the beach house during her final months. By morning, my voicemail was full. Aunt Susan: "Honey, you need to be reasonable about this. Patrick's just trying to honor your grandmother's wishes." My cousin Mark: "The beach house has been special to all of us. Don't be selfish, Annalie." Even my mother called, her voice carefully neutral. "I think you and Patrick need to work this out between yourselves. Family harmony is what matters most." I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my laptop screen where Patrick had created a Facebook group called Bradley Family Beach House. Already 20 family members had joined, sharing old photos taken at the property and discussing improvements they'd like to make. Patrick had even posted a proposed schedule for the upcoming summer, allotting me just 2 weekends in my own house. My phone pinged with a text from my best friend Taylor. How was the family gathering? Survive intact? I called her immediately, the words tumbling out in a rush. Taylor listened patiently before saying, "This is insane. The will is legal, right? Patrick can't just decide to redistribute your inheritance." The attorney was very clear that Grandma left the house to me alone. But now Patrick has this letter, and everyone's acting like I'm the villain for not wanting to share. What do your parents say? I sighed. They're staying out of it. You know how they are. They've always thought Patrick hung the moon. They'd never contradict him openly. After talking to Taylor, I felt steady enough to drive to my storage unit. I had boxes of items from Grandma Eleanor's house, things no one else had wanted during the initial distribution of her belongings. Perhaps there was something there that would shed light on her true intentions. 3 hours of digging yielded treasures. A photo album dedicated to our times together at the beach house, with inscriptions in Grandma's elegant handwriting. Annalie, age 8, collecting perfect sand dollars. Annalie's first attempt at clam chowder, delicious. A birthday card where she'd written, "One day this special place will be yours to love as I have." And most importantly, a journal where she'd detailed her estate planning, with a clear entry from just 6 months before her death, meeting with Thomas today. Finalizing the will. The beach house will go to Annalie. She's the only one who truly appreciates it for more than its monetary value. Relief washed over me. I wasn't imagining things. Grandma had intended the house for me alone. I called Thomas Harrington first thing Monday morning and explained the situation. "This is unfortunately common with valuable inheritances," he said with a sigh. "Family members often feel entitled to share in assets regardless of the deceased's wishes. But I can assure you that your grandmother was extremely clear. She revised her will 3 times in her final year, and each time she specifically left the beach house solely to you. What about this letter Patrick has? I'm not aware of any letter. But even if it exists, a casual mention of family gatherings wouldn't override the legal specifications in a properly executed will. Would you like me to speak with your brother?" I declined Thomas's offer, preferring to handle things myself. But when I tried calling Patrick, he didn't answer. Instead, I received an email from him with a scan of the supposed letter and a proposed management agreement for the beach house that would give him and Jessica primary decision, making authority while requiring me to pay 60% of all maintenance costs. The letter appeared to be written on my grandmother's stationery, but something about it didn't ring true. The phrasing didn't sound like her, and the signature seemed different from the ones in the cards and documents I had. Later that week, I decided to visit the beach house. I hadn't been there since before Grandma's death, and I needed to reconnect with the place and start planning the renovations. The 3-hour drive from Boston to Kennebunkport gave me time to think. Perhaps I could find a compromise, allow family to visit occasionally while maintaining my ownership. But when I arrived and turned into the familiar oyster shell driveway, my conciliatory thoughts evaporated. A new lock had been installed on the front door. My key, the spare Grandma had given me years ago, no longer worked. As I stood on the porch contemplating what to do, a car pulled up. Patrick stepped out, looking surprised to see me. "Oh, Annalie, I wasn't expecting you." He climbed the steps, a new set of keys dangling from his hand. "You changed the locks," I said flatly. Just a precaution. The old locks were ancient, and with the house sitting empty, he shrugged, then added with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, I was going to mail you a set. This is my house, Patrick. You had no right. That's still being determined, isn't it? Until things are settled legally, I think we all have equal claim. He unlocked the door and gestured for me to enter. I've been bringing family members by to discuss renovations. Everyone's excited about making this place more modern. I walked through the familiar rooms, now seeing them through new eyes. Post. It notes marked items with names. Jessica wants this bookcase. Mom would like the quilt. Mark and Lisa claim the deck furniture. It was as if I'd already lost. 2 days later, I received a certified letter from Wakefield and Associates, a law firm representing Patrick. The letter claimed joint ownership of the property through adverse possession and oral promise, legal terms I barely understood. What hit me hardest was seeing my father listed as a supporting witness, claiming Grandma had told him repeatedly that the beach house would belong to all her grandchildren eventually. I called my father immediately. Dad, how could you support Patrick's claim? You know Grandma wanted me to have the house. His response was hesitant. Patrick showed me documentation, Annalie, and he's planning to keep the property in the family, which is what your grandmother would have wanted. Did you even read what you signed? Patrick isn't trying to keep it in the family. He's trying to take it from me. I'm sure he's just trying to be fair to everyone. Why don't you two sit down and work out a compromise? I hung up, my hands shaking with anger and betrayal. That night I couldn't sleep, my mind racing with questions. How had this happened? How had my inheritance turned into a family war? And how far was Patrick willing to go? The next morning, I called Jennifer Hayes, an attorney recommended by a colleague who'd gone through a difficult inheritance battle. Jennifer specialized in estate disputes and had a reputation for being tough but fair. Her office was in a converted Victorian house in downtown Boston, with wide windows and bookshelves lining the walls. Your case isn't unusual, Jennifer said after I'd explained everything. Family inheritance disputes can bring out the worst in people, especially when valuable property is involved. What about Patrick's legal claims? Adverse possession and oral promise? Jennifer shook her head. Adverse possession typically requires someone to openly occupy property without permission for many years. It's not applicable here. And oral promises are very difficult to prove, especially when contradicted by a clear, legal will. So I'll win? Based on what you've told me, yes. But these cases can get messy and expensive. Is there any chance of reaching a settlement? I thought about Patrick's aggressive actions and the way he'd turned the family against me. No, he won't be reasonable. Jennifer began preparing a formal response to Patrick's lawyer while I tried to go about my normal life. But the situation was taking a toll. I found myself distracted at work, forgetting important details and snapping at colleagues. My supervisor, Dr. Winters, called me into her office after I administered the wrong dosage of medication, caught by another nurse before any harm was done. Annalie, this isn't like you. Is everything all right? I broke down and told her about the inheritance dispute. Dr. Winters was sympathetic but firm. You need to get this resolved or take some time off. We can't risk patient safety. Meanwhile, Patrick was escalating his campaign. I learned from my cousin Amy that he had been taking family members to tour his beach house, describing in detail the renovations he planned to make. He's talking about knocking down walls to create a great room, adding a third bathroom, and converting the sun porch into a game room for the kids, Amy told me, excited about the changes. Taylor convinced me to let her do some digging into Patrick's financial situation. As an accountant, she had access to public records I wouldn't know how to find. What she discovered explained Patrick's desperate grab for the beach property. He's in serious trouble, Annalie. His investment firm lost a major client last year, and he's been borrowing heavily. There are 2 mortgages on his house, maxed, out credit cards, and his kids' private school tuition is months behind. He needs assets, and that beach house is worth, what, $1.5 million in today's market? This information made me even more determined to fight. I wasn't going to lose my inheritance because of Patrick's financial mismanagement. My resolve was tested when my father called, his voice strained. Patrick came to see me. He says you're refusing all reasonable compromises and forcing him to take legal action. That's not true. He's the one who hired a lawyer and made false claims. He showed me documents, Annalie. He says you're distorting Grandma's wishes. Dad, he's lying to you. The will is completely clear. There was a long pause. I signed that affidavit because Patrick assured me it was just to start negotiations. I didn't understand it would be used in a lawsuit. Hope flared within me. Will you retract your statement? Tell the truth about what Grandma actually said about the house? Another long pause. I need to think about this. Patrick's very upset, and your mother doesn't want to get in the middle. It wasn't the support I wanted, but it was something. Later that week, Jennifer called with disturbing news. We've received documents from Patrick's attorney that appear to show your grandmother's signature on a property agreement. It designates the beach house as a family asset to be shared equally among all grandchildren after her death. That's impossible, I said. Grandma would never contradict her own will like that. I agree it's suspicious. We're going to request the original document for forensic analysis. In the meantime, we've secured a court date, but it's not until August, almost 3 months away. 3 months? But Patrick is already acting like he owns the place. We can request a temporary injunction to prevent any changes to the property until the case is resolved. But be prepared. These cases often move slowly. As predicted, Patrick's attorney filed multiple motions to delay the proceedings and requested extensive discovery, demanding every communication I'd ever had with my grandmother about the property. Each filing required a response from Jennifer, and each response meant more billable hours. My savings were dwindling rapidly. I tried avoiding family gatherings, but my mother's birthday in June was unavoidable. I arrived late and planned to leave early, but still faced a barrage of uncomfortable interactions. Aunt Susan, once my biggest supporter after my divorce, now barely met my eyes. Patrick says you've hired some shark lawyer to fight the family, she said when we were briefly alone in the kitchen. Is that really necessary, Annalie? I hired an attorney because Patrick is trying to take what Grandma legally left to me, I replied, struggling to keep my voice even. He showed us documents where Eleanor clearly wanted the house to stay available to everyone. Why are you fighting that? Before I could respond, Patrick entered with his arm around our cousin Mark. Just wait until you see what we're doing with the boat dock, he was saying. We'll finally have enough space to store everyone's kayaks and paddleboards. Our eyes met across the room. Patrick gave me a smug smile before turning back to Mark. The contractor starts work next week. We should have everything ready for the big Labor Day family gathering. I left shortly after, sick to my stomach at the thought of contractors changing the beach house before I'd even had a chance to spend one night there as its rightful owner. The preliminary hearing came in early July. I took a day off work and dressed carefully in a conservative blue dress and minimal jewelry. Patrick arrived with Jessica and their attorney, Mitchell Wells, a silver-haired man with an imposing presence. My parents chose not to attend, claiming they wanted to remain neutral. The hearing was brief, with both attorneys presenting initial arguments. Just as it seemed to be wrapping up, Mitchell Wells produced a surprise. Your Honor, we have video evidence of Eleanor Bradley expressing her wishes regarding the beach property. The judge allowed him to play the video. On screen appeared my grandmother, sitting in her familiar living room chair. The beach house has always been for the family. Her voice crackled through the speakers. I want it to remain a place where everyone can gather and enjoy for generations to come. My heart sank as I watched. But then I noticed something odd, a slight jump in the image, a change in the lighting. The video had been edited. I scribbled a note to Jennifer, who immediately requested the original recording for expert analysis. The judge agreed and scheduled another hearing for the following month. Outside the courtroom, Patrick approached me. You saw Grandma's own words, Annalie. Why keep fighting this? You're only hurting the family and wasting money on lawyers. That video was edited, I said. What did you cut out, Patrick? The part where she specifically said the house was mine? His confident expression flickered for just a moment before he composed himself. You're getting desperate. No one will believe these accusations. As he walked away, I felt a mixture of anger and determination. The glimpse of nervousness in his eyes confirmed what I already suspected. He was manipulating evidence, perhaps even committing fraud. I just needed to prove it. The legal battle was taking a toll on every aspect of my life. At work, I requested a temporary switch to administrative duties to avoid any more medication errors. My dating relationship with Michael, which had begun promisingly just before Grandma's death, crumbled under the weight of my preoccupation with the case. "You're not present, Annalie," Michael said during our last dinner together. "I understand you're going through something difficult, but it's all you talk about, all you think about." "I can't just turn it off," I tried to explain. "This isn't just about a house, it's my grandmother's legacy, my family betraying me, my brother trying to steal what's legally mine." Michael shook his head. "Call me when it's over, when you're you again." His words hurt, but I couldn't blame him. The person I'd become, suspicious, obsessed, constantly checking my phone for emails from Jennifer, wasn't someone I would want to date either. Taylor remained my rock, offering both emotional support and practical help. When my legal bills surpassed my savings, she loaned me $10,000. "Pay me back when you win," she said simply. And you will win. Meanwhile, Patrick's campaign continued. He and Jessica had started posting daily updates about the family beach house renovation on social media, tagging all our relatives. There were photos of Patrick pointing at walls to be removed, Jessica selecting new kitchen cabinets, and their children playing in the yard with signs reading "Our Summer Home," each image a deliberate provocation. In late July, I received an alarming call from Thomas Harrington, my grandmother's attorney. "Annalie, I've just been contacted by a construction company seeking verification of ownership for the Kennebunkport property. They've been contracted to begin major renovations next week, removal of interior walls, new plumbing, electrical rewiring. They have permit applications listing Patrick as the property owner." "That's impossible. The title hasn't been transferred yet, right?" "That's correct. The property is still technically part of your grandmother's estate, with you as the named beneficiary. I've informed the construction company of this, but I thought you should know." I called Jennifer immediately, who filed an emergency motion to halt any construction. "We need to document the current state of the property," she advised. "If Patrick has already made unauthorized changes, it strengthens our case." The next day, I drove to Kennebunkport with Taylor. As expected, the new locks prevented our entry, but we could see through the windows. The interior was already in disarray. Furniture moved, walls marked with tape, holes punched through the plaster in some areas. "He's already started," I said, fighting back tears. "How could he do this before the case is even decided?" We were taking photos of the exterior when a large truck pulled into the driveway. Two men in work clothes approached us. "Can I help you, ladies?" the older one asked. "I'm Annalie Bradley. This is my property." The man frowned. "We're scheduled to begin renovation work for Mr. Patrick Bradley. He's the owner according to our contract." I took a deep breath. "There's a legal dispute over ownership. My attorney has filed for an injunction against any construction work until it's resolved." The workers exchanged glances. "We haven't heard anything about that," the younger one said. "We're supposed to start demolition today." "Please don't," I said. "If you proceed, you could be liable for damages to property you don't have legal permission to modify." They ultimately agreed to postpone work until they could verify the situation, which bought me some time. But the incident left me shaking with anger and anxiety. Back in Boston, Jennifer had news. The judge has granted our request for forensic analysis of the video Patrick submitted. We'll have results within 2 weeks. Additionally, I've been investigating the property agreement with your grandmother's supposed signature. The document was notarized by someone named Linda Marsh in Portland, but when I contacted her office, they have no record of notarizing any document for Eleanor Bradley. So, Patrick forged it? It appears that way. If we can prove forgery, it completely undermines his case and could result in criminal charges. August arrived with a heat wave and new complications. The construction company had filed liens against the beach property for breach of contract, claiming they'd purchased materials based on Patrick's authorization. My father finally admitted that Patrick had pressured him into signing the affidavit with misleading information, but he still refused to provide a formal retraction, fearing family repercussions. The forensic analysis of the video came back confirming my suspicions. It had been heavily edited, splicing together comments my grandmother had made about family gatherings with unrelated statements about property. The original recording, which Patrick was now ordered to produce in its entirety, appeared to be mysteriously lost. Just when I thought things couldn't get more stressful, I received a call from my Aunt Susan. "Annalie, I need to talk to you about Patrick. Something doesn't feel right. We met at a cafe halfway between our homes." Susan looked tired, the lines around her eyes deeper than I remembered. "I've been going along with Patrick because he showed us all that letter and the video," she began, nervously turning her coffee cup. "But yesterday I was at your parents' house, and I overheard Patrick on the phone. He was talking to someone about getting a loan against the beach property and mentioned something about once the title clears. It sounded like he's planning to sell it or use it as collateral." My stomach dropped. That's exactly what I've been trying to tell everyone. This isn't about keeping the house in the family. It's about Patrick needing money. Susan reached for my hand. "I'm so sorry, Annalie. I should have trusted you. Your grandmother and I were close, and she did tell me she was leaving you the beach house. I just got caught up in Patrick's version of things." Having Susan back on my side was a small victory, but the situation took another unexpected turn the following week, when Jennifer discovered Mitchell Wells, Patrick's attorney, had previously represented the construction company now filing liens against the property, a clear conflict of interest. She filed a motion to disqualify him from the case, which would force Patrick to find new legal representation and likely delay proceedings further. I was leaving a meeting with Jennifer when my phone rang, an unknown number. "Is this Annalie Bradley?" a woman's voice asked when I answered. "Yes, who's this?" "Jessica, Patrick's wife." Her voice was hushed, as if she didn't want to be overheard. "We need to talk, not on the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow?" Surprised and suspicious, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop in Cambridge, far from both our usual haunts. Jessica arrived wearing large sunglasses and a baseball cap pulled low, looking nothing like her usually polished self. "Patrick doesn't know I'm here," she said immediately. "If he found out, he'd, too." She didn't finish the sentence, but the implication was clear. "What's going on, Jessica?" She glanced around nervously before pulling out her phone and showing me a series of screenshots. "Patrick's been lying to everyone. He doesn't want the beach house for the family. He's already negotiated a sale with a developer who wants to tear it down and build luxury condos. He's just waiting for the court to rule in his favor." I stared at the evidence. Emails between Patrick and someone named Warren Simmons discussing post-acquisition plans for the property, with a purchase price of $2 million. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. Jessica's composure cracked, tears welling behind her designer sunglasses, "because everything's falling apart. Patrick lost his biggest clients last year. We're behind on the mortgage, maxed out on credit cards. He's been gambling, trying to recoup the losses." She took a shaky breath. "He told the family he wants to preserve your grandmother's legacy, but he's planning to sell the moment he gets control. I can't be part of this anymore. Will you testify? Tell the court what you know?" She hesitated. "I don't know if I can go that far, but I'll give you copies of everything I have. Maybe that will be enough." As Jessica left, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and sadness. I'd been right about Patrick's motives, but the knowledge brought no joy, only confirmation that my brother was even more desperate and dishonest than I'd imagined. Armed with Jessica's evidence, Jennifer felt confident we could win in court. "This completely contradicts Patrick's claim about wanting to preserve the property for family use," she said. "Combined with the forged documents and edited video, his case is collapsing." But Patrick wasn't giving up. The next day, I received frantic calls from several relatives. "Did you know Patrick's throwing a huge Labor Day housewarming at the beach house?" my cousin Amy asked. "He's invited the whole family plus neighbors. He says it's to reclaim the family legacy now that the legal issues are nearly resolved." "The legal issues aren't resolved at all," I said. "The case hasn't even gone to trial yet." "That's not what Patrick's telling everyone. He says his attorney assured him it's just a formality at this point." Similar calls came from other family members, all with invitations to the Labor Day event. Patrick was creating a narrative of victory before the court had made any ruling. Jennifer advised me to let it play out. "If he's making false claims about the case status, that's another strike against him. Just document everything." But the situation wasn't only affecting my family relationships. At work, Dr. Winters called me into her office again. "Annalee, I've noticed you've been taking a lot of personal days lately. I'm sorry. The legal case has required me to attend hearings and meet with my attorney. I understand that, but we need reliable staffing. Several parents have specifically requested you for their children, and we've had to reassign them." She sighed. "I value you as a nurse, but I need to know if you can commit to your scheduled hours going forward." I wanted to promise that I could, but with the case continuing to demand more of my time and energy, it wouldn't be honest. "I don't know," I admitted. "I'm hoping everything will be resolved soon, but I can't guarantee it." Dr. Winters nodded. "Take a leave of absence, paid, for 4 weeks. Sort out your legal issues, and then we'll reevaluate." It was a generous offer, but also a warning. My job, the career I'd worked so hard to build, was now at risk because of Patrick's actions. With more time on my hands, I decided to hire a private investigator to document what was happening at the beach house. Scott Davidson, a former police detective recommended by Jennifer, agreed to take photos and monitor activity at the property. "Your brother's going all out with these renovations," Scott reported after his first day of surveillance. "There's a dumpster full of original fixtures, including those blue shutters you mentioned. They're gutting the place." Each update was like a knife to the heart. The beach house I'd known and loved was being destroyed, its character stripped away to make it more marketable. Scott also discovered something alarming. Patrick had taken out a loan against the property using forged documents. He used a title company in New Hampshire that doesn't do thorough verification, Scott explained. He's gotten $100,000 with the beach house as collateral. "Is that even legal?" I asked Jennifer when I relayed this information. "Absolutely not. It's fraud, plain and simple. We need to notify the lender immediately and add this to our case." August rolled into September. The Labor Day weekend approached, and with it Patrick's planned housewarming party. Jennifer secured a court date for the following week, but advised against trying to stop the party. "It's better to let him demonstrate his disregard for proper legal process," she said. "Every action he takes without clear title strengthens our position." I was struggling with this passive approach when I received an unexpected call from my mother. "Annalee, we need to talk about Patrick," she said, her voice uncharacteristically firm. "Your father and I have been trying to stay neutral, but things have gone too far." We met at their house the next day. For the first time, both my parents seemed truly concerned about Patrick's behavior. "He asked us to sign a loan using the beach house as collateral," my father explained. "When I questioned whether he had the authority to do that, he became angry, said we were choosing you over him." "He's not the Patrick we know anymore," my mother added. "He's desperate, making wild accusations, saying you've manipulated everyone against him." "Will you help me?" I asked. "Will you publicly support my claim to the house?" They exchanged glances. "We're not ready to testify against our son," my father said slowly. "But we won't support his claims anymore either. We've told him we won't attend his Labor Day party." It wasn't everything I wanted, but it was a significant shift. Patrick was losing his carefully constructed facade of family support. The Friday before Labor Day, I received frantic messages from both the original construction company and a new contractor Patrick had hired. The beach house had suffered significant water damage due to improperly installed plumbing during the renovations. Walls were saturated, floors buckled, and mold was already appearing. "This is catastrophic," Jennifer said when I forwarded the reports and photos. "The property has been substantially damaged due to unauthorized work. We're adding these damages to our lawsuit." But the news got even worse. Scott Davidson discovered that Patrick had bribed a county clerk to modify property records, creating a document that appeared to show joint ownership between Patrick and me. This had allowed him to proceed with the renovations despite the pending legal case. When confronted with this evidence, the clerk admitted everything, fearing criminal charges himself. He provided a sworn statement detailing Patrick's actions. "This moves beyond a civil dispute into criminal territory," Jennifer explained. "Falsifying public records is a serious offense. The FBI might become involved due to the loan fraud aspect." Despite mounting evidence against him, Patrick maintained his public stance, blaming me for destroying family relationships and portraying himself as the victim. He posted a long message on social media about how I was dishonoring Grandma's memory by fighting his efforts to preserve the family gathering place. The forensic analysis of the forged documents came back conclusively proving that my grandmother's signature had been digitally copied from her will and pasted onto the property agreement. This, combined with the bribed clerk's testimony and Jessica's evidence about the planned sale, created an overwhelming case against Patrick. The day before the final court hearing, Taylor called me, her voice urgent. "Annalee, have you seen the news? Patrick's missing." "What do you mean, missing?" "Your parents filed a police report. He didn't come home last night, and no one can reach him. His office says he cleared out his desk yesterday." I immediately called Jennifer, who confirmed the news. This actually happens sometimes when people realize they're about to face serious consequences. The evidence against your brother is overwhelming, and he could be looking at criminal charges beyond just losing the civil case. Will the hearing still happen tomorrow? Yes. Patrick's attorney has asked for a postponement, but given the circumstances, the judge is unlikely to grant it. His disappearance doesn't look good for his case. That night, I barely slept, wondering where Patrick had gone and what this meant for tomorrow's hearing. Part of me felt vindicated that the truth was finally coming out, but another part mourned the brother I had once known, the one who had taught me to ride a bike, who had defended me against bullies in elementary school. How had we ended up here? In the morning, as I dressed for court, I received a text from Jessica. "Patrick emptied our accounts, took the kids' college funds. I'm filing for divorce." The pieces were falling into place. Patrick hadn't just disappeared, he had fled, taking whatever money he could access. As I headed to the courthouse, I wondered if I would ever see my brother again. The courthouse was a stately brick building in downtown Boston, its steps already crowded with people despite the early hour. I spotted Mitchell Wells, Patrick's attorney, looking distinctly uncomfortable as he spoke with a younger colleague. When he saw me, he quickly averted his eyes. Inside, I was surprised to see several family members, Aunt Susan, my cousins Mark and Amy, and even my parents, sitting together in the back row. They nodded to me as I passed, their expressions solemn. Jennifer met me at the front looking confident. Patrick's attorney has formally requested a postponement due to his client's absence, but the judge is proceeding as scheduled. Without Patrick here to defend himself or explain the evidence against him, this should be straightforward. Judge Catherine Landry entered the courtroom, a stern-looking woman in her 60s with silver hair and penetrating eyes. She began by addressing Patrick's absence. "I understand the defendant is not present today. Mr. Wells, can you provide any information about your client's whereabouts?" Mitchell Wells stood. "Your Honor, I have been unable to contact my client since yesterday afternoon. His family has filed a missing persons report. I would request a postponement until he can be located." Judge Landry frowned. Given the nature of the evidence submitted in this case, including allegations of document forgery and attempted fraud, Mr. Bradley's absence appears suspicious. I am inclined to proceed. Does counsel for the plaintiff have any objection? Jennifer rose. "No objection, Your Honor. We're prepared to proceed." The hearing moved quickly after that. Jennifer presented our evidence methodically, the clear language of my grandmother's will, the forensic reports confirming forgery of both documents and video, the testimony from the county clerk about record tampering, and Jessica's evidence about Patrick's plans to sell the property immediately. Mitchell Wells made a half-hearted attempt to defend his absent client, suggesting that Patrick might have genuinely misunderstood my grandmother's intentions. But without Patrick there to testify, and with the overwhelming evidence against him, it was a losing battle. After just 2 hours, Judge Landry made her ruling. Based on the evidence presented, I find in favor of the plaintiff, Annalee Bradley. The Kennebunkport property was clearly and legally bequeathed solely to her by Eleanor Bradley. All claims by Patrick Bradley are dismissed. She looked directly at me. "Miss Bradley, you are the rightful owner of the property. I am issuing an immediate order confirming your ownership and enjoining any other party from making claims against it." Relief washed over me in waves. After months of fighting, the house was officially mine. But Judge Landry wasn't finished. Additionally, I am referring the evidence of document forgery, falsification of public records, and loan fraud to the district attorney's office for potential criminal investigation, Mr. Wells. I suggest you advise your client, should you hear from him, that cooperating with authorities would be in his best interest. Outside the courthouse, my family approached hesitantly. My mother embraced me first. "I'm so sorry, Annalie. We should have believed you from the beginning. We were trying to stay neutral," my father added. "We never imagined Patrick would go this far." Aunt Susan squeezed my hand. "Have you heard anything about Patrick?" I shook my head. "Nothing since yesterday. Jessica texted that he emptied their accounts before he disappeared." The implications settled heavily on everyone. Patrick hadn't just lost a court case. He had likely committed crimes serious enough to warrant fleeing rather than facing consequences. Jennifer handed me the court order, the official document confirming my ownership of the beach house. "Congratulations. It's been a difficult journey, but justice prevailed." "What happens now?" I asked. "With the damage to the house, the fraudulent loan, the liens from contractors, the court order invalidates any transactions Patrick made regarding the property. The lender will have to pursue him for the fraudulent loan, not you or the property. As for the contractors, those who acted in good faith thinking Patrick was the owner may have claims against him, but not against you. Your homeowner's insurance should cover the water damage, since it resulted from unauthorized work." I looked down at the court order in my hands, feeling victorious but also exhausted. The legal battle was over, but the emotional aftermath was just beginning. My brother was a fugitive. My family was in turmoil, and the beach house I had inherited was now damaged, its character altered by Patrick's hasty renovations. On the drive back to my apartment, I called Taylor to share the news. The judge ruled in my favor. "It's officially over, the house is mine." "That's amazing. We should celebrate tonight. Dinner at Marcello's?" "I can't tonight. There's something I need to do first." Instead of heading home, I drove to Kennebunkport. It was time to see exactly what had happened to my property. The beach house looked different even from the outside. The blue shutters were gone, replaced with modern black ones that clashed with the weathered cedar siding. The wraparound porch had been partially demolished, with new composite decking installed on one side while the other remained torn up. Using the key Jennifer had obtained from the court, I entered my property for the first time as its legal owner. The interior was worse than I'd imagined. Walls had been removed, creating an open floor plan that erased the cozy, compartmentalized charm of the original layout. The vintage kitchen had been gutted, with installed modern cabinets and granite countertops. Water damage was evident everywhere: stained ceilings, warped floorboards, musty odors suggesting mold. I wandered from room to room, cataloging the destruction. My grandmother's bedroom, once a sanctuary with floral wallpaper and antique furniture, had been stripped to the studs. The sun porch where we'd played board games was now filled with construction debris. Even the stairs to the second floor had been modified, the handcrafted banister replaced with a sleek metal one that was only partially installed. Tears streamed down my face as I stood in what had been the living room, now an unrecognizable space with exposed wiring and half-finished drywall. This wasn't just damage to a building, it was the systematic erasure of memories, the destruction of a place that had represented safety and love throughout my childhood. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the windows, I made a decision. I would rebuild. Not to Patrick's modernized vision, but to honor the spirit of the original house and my grandmother's legacy. It would take time and money, but the beach house would be restored. My phone rang, Jennifer calling with an update. "I thought you should know. The police just found Patrick's car abandoned at Logan Airport. They're checking flight manifests, but it appears he may have left the country." "What about Jessica? And the kids?" "They're still at home. She's cooperating with investigators, trading information for immunity from any charges." After hanging up, I stood at the window watching waves crash against the shore. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace despite the chaos around me. The legal battle was over. The house was mine. Now I could begin the process of healing, both the property and myself. As I locked up to leave, I noticed something I had missed earlier. On the back porch, Untouched amidst the renovation chaos, sat my grandmother's old rocking chair. I ran my hand over the worn arms, remembering how she used to sit there in the evenings, telling stories while the sun set over the ocean. Some things couldn't be destroyed, no matter how hard Patrick had tried. The essence of what made this place special remained, waiting to be nurtured back to life. The week following the court victory was a whirlwind of activity. Jennifer connected me with insurance adjusters to assess the water damage, and I hired a restoration specialist to evaluate what could be saved of the original structure. The news was mixed. While the house wasn't beyond repair, the restoration would be extensive and expensive. The good news is that the foundation and most of the framing are sound, Rick Matheson, the restoration expert, explained as we walked through the property. The bad news is that the water damage is significant, and some of Patrick's contractors cut corners that will need to be addressed. I nodded, trying to focus on solutions rather than my anger at Patrick. What about restoring some of the original features? The built-in bookshelves, the window seats? Rick smiled. We can definitely recreate those elements. I specialize in restoring historic properties to their original character while updating the infrastructure to modern standards. It won't be cheap, though. I understand. This place is worth it. With my leave of absence from the hospital, I had time to focus on the restoration plans. I moved temporarily into a small rental cottage nearby, allowing me to oversee the work and make decisions as needed. Taylor came up for weekends, helping me sort through the salvaged items and offering moral support. Meanwhile, the investigation into Patrick's activities continued. The FBI became involved due to the interstate nature of the loan fraud and the evidence of multiple financial crimes. Jessica provided them with access to Patrick's emails and financial records, revealing a pattern of increasingly desperate behavior over the past year. They think he went to Mexico first, then possibly South America, Taylor told me. After speaking with a friend in law enforcement, they've frozen his accounts, but he took enough cash to disappear for a while. My parents were devastated by Patrick's actions and his abandonment of his family. They came to visit the beach house, visibly shocked by the state of it. I can't believe he did this, my mother said, running her hand along a water-stained wall. Not just the legal fight, but destroying something that was so special to your grandmother. And to you, my father added quietly. We should have stood up for you sooner, Annalie. I'm sorry. Their apology meant more than they could know. After months of feeling isolated and betrayed by my family, having their support helped heal some of the emotional damage. Gradually, other family members reached out as well. Aunt Susan brought lunch for the workers one day and stayed to help me sort through old photographs for inspiration in the restoration. My cousins offered assistance with painting or landscaping when the time came. Even Jessica contacted me, apologizing for her role in Patrick's scheme and offering to return furniture that had been removed from the house. One evening in late September, as I sat on the partially repaired back porch watching the sunset, I received a call from an unknown number. Is this Annalie Bradley? A man's voice asked. Yes. Who's this? Detective James Morrison with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. I wanted to update you personally on your brother's case. We've confirmed that Patrick crossed into Mexico the day before your court hearing and then flew to Argentina. We're working with international authorities to locate him. Do you think you'll find him? Eventually. People like your brother usually make mistakes. They can't help themselves. He paused. In the meantime, we've uncovered evidence that he may have been planning this for months. There are records of multiple offshore accounts and communications with contacts in South America dating back to earlier this year. After hanging up, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. On one hand, knowing Patrick had been plotting his escape long before the court ruling confirmed my suspicions about his true intentions. On the other hand, it was heartbreaking to think my brother had been calculating enough to establish escape routes while pretending to fight for family values. The restoration work proceeded slowly but steadily. By October, the water damage had been addressed, mold remediation completed, and the structural repairs were underway. I worked closely with Rick to recreate the home's original charm while making practical improvements to prevent future problems. One major decision was what to do with the partially demolished walls. Patrick's open floor plan concept had compromised the house's structural integrity, and the engineers recommended either fully committing to the new layout or restoring the original walls. "What would your grandmother have wanted?" Rick asked as we reviewed the blueprints. I thought about Eleanor's love of cozy, intimate spaces where conversations happen naturally. She would want it put back the way it was. The separate rooms created privacy and character. Rick nodded. I agree. This house wasn't designed to be open concept. It was built for family living in a different era, with spaces for different activities and moments of quiet retreat. As October turned to November, I faced a decision about my job. Dr. Winters called to discuss my return. "Your leave of absence is almost up, Annalie. We need to know if you're coming back." I looked around at the beach house, still months away from completion, but already feeling more like home than my Boston apartment ever had. "I'd like to come back, but I'm not sure I can return to Boston full-time. Is there any possibility of a transfer to Portland Children's? It's much closer to where I'm living now. Let me see what I can do. You're a valuable nurse, and I'd rather help you transfer within our hospital system than lose you entirely." The pieces of my new life were falling into place, but there was still unfinished business. Patrick's Labor Day housewarming had never happened due to his disappearance, but I learned from Jessica that he had invited dozens of people, including family members, neighbors, and business associates. Many of them still believed his version of events, that I had somehow manipulated the legal system to steal a family property. "You should have your own housewarming when the place is ready," Taylor suggested during one of her weekend visits. "Reclaim the narrative and show everyone what you're really doing with the house." While that day was still far off, I liked the idea of eventually welcoming family back to the restored beach house on my terms, with boundaries that respected my ownership while honoring my grandmother's love of family gatherings. November brought a storm that tested the new roof and windows. I stood inside listening to the rain and wind, grateful that the house now stood secure against the elements. That same week brought news from Detective Morrison. Patrick had been spotted in Buenos Aires, but had evaded arrest. "He can't run forever," the detective assured me. "And every time he accesses money or uses identification, he leaves a trail." I was hanging up when I noticed a car I didn't recognize pulling into the driveway. A group of people emerged, Patrick's wife Jessica and their 2 children, along with a woman I didn't know. I went to the front door cautiously. Jessica looked thinner, her designer clothes replaced by jeans and a practical jacket. The children, 9-year-old Lily and 7-year-old Jake, hung back shyly. "Annalie, this is Sharon Levine, our family therapist," Jessica said. "The kids have been having a hard time understanding what happened with their father. Sharon thought it might help if they could see the house and hear from you directly." I invited them in, surprised but touched by the request. We sat in the partially furnished living room while Sharon explained. "Children often create narratives to explain painful situations," she said. "Right now, Lily and Jake are confused about why their father left and why there was conflict over this house. Jessica thought hearing your perspective might help them process what's happened." I looked at my niece and nephew, their faces so similar to Patrick's that it made my heart ache. I'd be happy to talk to them, but I'm not sure what to say. "Just the truth," Jessica said quietly. "That's what they need most right now." So I told them, in simple terms, about their great-grandmother leaving me the beach house because we had a special bond. I explained that their father had wanted the house too, and instead of accepting the situation, he had tried to take it through unfair means. "Is that why Daddy went away?" Lily asked, her voice small. Jessica answered before I could. "Yes, honey. Daddy made some bad choices, and now he's hiding from the consequences. But that doesn't mean he doesn't love you." Jake looked around at the construction materials. "Are you fixing the house?" "I am," I said. "I'm trying to make it look the way it did when I was a little girl, when your great-grandmother was still alive." "Can we see it when it's done?" he asked. I glanced at Jessica, who nodded slightly. "Of course you can. This house has always been a place for family, even if it belongs to me. You're welcome here any time." As they were leaving, Jessica pulled me aside. "I've filed for divorce. The FBI has frozen most of our assets, but I found a job teaching at the kids' school. We're managing. If you need anything, I began. "We'll be okay," she said firmly. "But thank you for being kind to the children despite everything. They shouldn't suffer for Patrick's mistakes." Watching them drive away, I felt another piece of the healing process click into place. The beach house wasn't just my refuge anymore. It could still be a place of family connection, just with healthier boundaries than Patrick had envisioned. The next day, I received an urgent call from Jennifer. "Annalie, we've just gotten word that there's a group planning to occupy your property this weekend. Apparently, despite everything, some family members and friends of Patrick still believe his claims. They're organizing what they're calling a family reclamation of the beach house. They can't do that. I have a court order. You're right, they can't legally do it. I've notified the local police, but I thought you should be prepared. These situations can get complicated." I hung up, shocked that after all the legal proceedings and Patrick's exposed fraud, there were still people willing to trespass on my property to support his false narrative. According to Jennifer, the group had been rallied by Patrick's friend from college, who believed I had somehow railroaded my mentally unstable brother out of his rightful inheritance. As the weekend approached, I debated whether to leave the property to avoid confrontation or stay and assert my legal rights. In the end, I decided to stay, with Taylor and Rick agreeing to be present as witnesses. Jennifer provided me with multiple copies of the court order confirming my ownership, and I contacted the local sheriff's office to alert them to the potential situation. Saturday morning dawned clear and cold. Rick and his workers agreed to continue with scheduled repairs, providing additional presence on the property. By noon, there was no sign of the threatened reclamation, and I began to hope Jennifer's information had been wrong. Then, just after 2 o'clock, a caravan of cars and SUVs turned into the driveway. I counted at least 6 vehicles, with multiple people in each. They parked haphazardly on the lawn and began unloading coolers, folding tables, and what looked like party supplies. I stepped onto the porch, court order in hand, Taylor beside me. A tall man I recognized as Grant Wilson, Patrick's college roommate and best man at his wedding, approached with a confident smile. "You must be Annalie," he said, as if we were meeting at a casual social event rather than during an attempted trespass. "We're here for the housewarming. Little late, but better than never, right?" "This is private property," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "You were not invited, and you need to leave immediately." Grant's smile didn't waver. "Come on, don't be difficult. This is family property. It always has been. We're just honoring Eleanor's wishes to keep it as a gathering place." "That's not true, and you know it. I have a court order confirming my sole ownership." I held up the document. "The legal case is settled. Patrick lost because he forged documents and lied about our grandmother's intentions." "That's your version," Grant said, his smile finally fading. "Patrick told us what really happened. He's the victim here, not you." Behind him, I could see about 20 people watching our confrontation while continuing to unpack vehicles. I recognized several of Patrick's friends, a few distant relatives, and Jessica's parents who apparently hadn't accepted their daughter's decision to cooperate with authorities. "This is your final warning," I said. "Leave now, or I'm calling the sheriff. I have already notified them of potential trespassing today." Grant laughed. "By the time they get here, we'll be set up, and they're not going to drag a bunch of family members off the property over what's clearly a civil dispute." I pulled out my phone and dialed the number the sheriff's office had given me. "This is Annalie Bradley at 157 Shoreline Drive. The trespassing situation we discussed is happening now. There are approximately 20 people refusing to leave my property." Grant's confidence visibly wavered as he realized I wasn't bluffing. Some of the people behind him began looking uncertain, pausing in their unpacking. "You're making a mistake," Grant said. "This isn't what Eleanor would have wanted." "You didn't know my grandmother," I replied. "But I did, and she would be horrified by what Patrick did to try to steal this property." The standoff continued for 10 tense minutes. A few people returned to their vehicles, unwilling to risk legal trouble, but Grant and a core group remained defiant. Rick and his workers stood nearby, a silent show of support. Then we heard sirens in the distance. "Last chance," I said to Grant. "Leave now or deal with the consequences." Instead of leaving, Grant turned to the remaining group. "Start setting up. We have a right to be here. This is a family property." As the sirens grew louder, I stood my ground on the porch, the court order still clutched in my hand. After months of fighting for what was rightfully mine, I wasn't backing down now. The sheriff's cars pulled up in front of the beach house, lights flashing. 2 officers emerged from each vehicle, approaching the scene with professional caution. Sheriff Tom Ridley, a tall man with graying hair and a weathered face, recognized me from our earlier conversations. "Miss Bradley," he nodded. "I understand these individuals are trespassing on your property?" "Yes, Sheriff. I've asked them to leave multiple times. They're attempting to set up some kind of party without my permission." I handed him the court order. "This confirms my legal ownership of the property." Sheriff Ridley reviewed the document, then turned to address the group. "Folks, I need everyone who doesn't have the owner's permission to be here to pack up and leave immediately." Grant stepped forward. "Sheriff, this is a family property. We're here for a gathering that was planned weeks ago. Do you have documentation showing you have any legal right to be here?" the sheriff asked. "It's complicated," Grant hedged. "The person listed on that court order stole this property from her brother through legal manipulation." Sheriff Ridley's expression remained impassive. "Court orders aren't complicated, sir. They're legally binding. If Miss Bradley says you're trespassing, then you're trespassing. You have 5 minutes to begin vacating the property before we start issuing citations." Grant's face reddened. "This is ridiculous. Patrick Bradley is the rightful owner of this house. His grandmother wanted it to stay in the family." "Sir, lower your voice," one of the deputies warned. "The court has ruled on ownership, and it isn't Mr. Bradley. Your 5 minutes starts now." Some of the group immediately began packing up, clearly unwilling to risk legal consequences. Others hesitated, looking to Grant for direction. He made one last attempt. "Annalee, be reasonable. We've come all this way. The food's already prepared. Can't we just have our gathering and then leave? For family harmony?" I thought about all the months of stress, the legal fees, the damage to the house, the sleepless nights. I thought about Patrick emptying his children's college funds before fleeing the country. I thought about the forged documents and manipulated video. "No," I said firmly. "You need to leave. Now." Sheriff Ridley nodded to his deputies, who began approaching the stragglers with citation books in hand. The resistance crumbled quickly after that. Within 20 minutes, the caravan of vehicles was pulling out of the driveway, leaving behind only some scattered trash and tire marks on the lawn. "We'll have a patrol car drive by regularly for the next few days," Sheriff Ridley assured me. "If they come back, call us immediately." "Thank you," I said, feeling the tension drain from my shoulders. "I appreciate your help." After the sheriff left, Taylor hugged me tightly. "You did it! You stood your ground!" Rick and his crew, who had witnessed the entire confrontation, seemed impressed. "That took courage," Rick said. "Not everyone would have handled it so calmly." That evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset over the ocean, I felt a profound sense of peace. For the first time since my grandmother's death, I truly believed that everything would be okay. The house was mine, legally and morally. The restoration was progressing well, and I had stood up for myself against those who tried to intimidate me. 2 weeks later, I received news that Patrick had been arrested in Chile and was awaiting extradition to the United States. Detective Morrison called to inform me personally. He'll face multiple federal charges, including bank fraud, wire fraud, and falsification of documents, he explained. Given the evidence we've gathered, he's looking at significant prison time. I felt no satisfaction at the news, only sadness that my brother's greed and entitlement had led him down such a destructive path. "What about restitution for the damage to the beach house?" I asked. "The court will likely order it, but recovering the money might be difficult. We're still tracing funds he transferred overseas." By December, the major structural repairs to the beach house were complete, and the interior work was progressing well. Rick had found craftsmen able to recreate the original moldings and built in features that Patrick had destroyed. The blue shutters had been replicated from old photographs, and the wraparound porch was fully restored. Dr. Winters came through with a transfer to Portland Children's Hospital, allowing me to continue my nursing career while living at the beach house. The shorter commute and peaceful surroundings helped me rediscover my passion for pediatric care. Gradually, family relationships began to heal. My parents visited regularly, helping with painting and decorating. Aunt Susan organized a cleanup of the beach area, removing debris that had accumulated during the months of neglect. Even some of the cousins who had initially sided with Patrick reached out, apologizing for their role in the conflict. Jessica and the children came for Sunday dinners occasionally, a new tradition that helped the kids maintain a connection to their family despite their father's absence. Watching Lily and Jake play on the same beach where Patrick and I had built sandcastles as children brought a bittersweet feeling, sadness for what was lost, hope for what could still be salvaged. The restoration was finally completed in early spring. The beach house looked much as it had when my grandmother was alive, with a few modern updates for comfort and efficiency. The character and charm that Patrick had tried to erase were fully restored. The cozy reading nooks, the kitchen with its vintage-style fixtures, the sun porch perfect for board games and afternoon naps. For the official housewarming, I invited only those who had supported me throughout the ordeal: Taylor, Rick and his crew, Jennifer, a few close colleagues from the hospital, and the family members who had stood by me or made amends. It was a small gathering, nothing like the grand party Patrick had planned, but it was genuine and warm. As everyone explored the restored house, exclaiming over details they remembered or admiring new features, I felt my grandmother's presence strongly. She would have approved of everything. Not just the physical restoration, but the restoration of healthy boundaries and genuine relationships. After dinner, as we gathered on the porch with glasses of wine, my father proposed a toast to Annalie, who fought not just for a house, but for what was right, and to Eleanor, whose legacy lives on in this beautiful place and in her granddaughter's spirit. Later, after everyone had gone, I sat alone in my grandmother's rocking chair, watching the moonlight on the waves. I thought about the journey of the past year, the pain, the betrayal, the legal battles, and ultimately, the triumph. I had discovered strength I didn't know I possessed, rebuilt relationships I feared were permanently damaged, and created a home that honored both the past and the future. The beach house was more than just a property. It was a symbol of resilience and renewal. My grandmother had known that I would cherish it properly, that I would fight for it if necessary. In leaving it to me, she had given me not just a physical legacy, but a chance to discover who I truly was when faced with adversity. As spring turned to summer, I settled into my new life. Working 3 days a week at the Portland Hospital gave me time to enjoy the beach house and welcome visitors on my own terms. I established clear boundaries. Family members could visit by invitation, with respect for my ownership and privacy, while still honoring my grandmother's tradition of hospitality. Patrick eventually accepted a plea deal and was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. I visited him once, finding him diminished and bitter. He refused to apologize, still insisting he had been entitled to the property. I left knowing we would likely never repair our relationship, but at peace with my own actions throughout the ordeal. On the anniversary of my grandmother's death, I planted a garden of her favorite flowers along the path to the beach. As I worked, I thought about all she had taught me, about standing up for myself, about valuing what truly matters, about creating a home filled with love rather than conflict. The beach house had been worth fighting for, not just because of its monetary value or scenic location, but because it represented something precious, the right to claim what is rightfully yours, to protect it from those who would take it through deception, and to transform it into something even more beautiful through hard work and care. I had learned that sometimes the people closest to you can cause the deepest wounds, but also that healing is possible when you stand firm in your truth. I had discovered that family isn't just about blood ties, but about mutual respect and support. And I had found that home isn't just a physical place, but a feeling of peace and belonging that no one can take away unless you allow it. As I sit here now, writing this from my grandmother's restored sun porch, I can say with certainty that every struggle was worth it. The beach house is truly mine now, not just legally, but spiritually. Every room holds memories of the past and possibilities for the future. Every sunrise brings new appreciation for this place that was saved from destruction and restored with love. If you've ever faced someone trying to take what's rightfully yours, or had to fight against family members who betrayed your trust, know that you're not alone. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Protecting what matters isn't wrong. It's brave. And rebuilding after betrayal isn't impossible. It's transformative. Have you ever had to fight for something that was rightfully yours? How did you handle family conflict over property or inheritance? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share to help others who might be facing similar challenges. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May you always have the courage to protect what's precious to you and the strength to rebuild what others try to destroy.